Welcome to Rising Tide Startups, where today's most exciting startup founders share their stories and strategies. They also deliver tangible lessons learned along the way that you can apply to your own startup. Each episode is a true masterclass. Make sure you take notes. Take it away, Kevin.
This is Kevin Pruitt with another episode of Rising Tide Startups, and my special guest today is Prabhjot Singh. Thanks for joining us on Rising Tide.
Kevin, thanks for having me. Excited to be here today.
So I asked him right before I hit the big red record button. I said, "You got to help me with your name here because I don't want to embarrass myself or you, either one of us on this call." But man, I just appreciate you taking time to chat with us today in the midst of all that you've got going on. But if you and I met at like a networking event, like a business networking event, how would you introduce yourself?
So I'm obviously founder, CEO of Pyze. Started the company about 8 years ago, and our focus really is on helping companies achieve operational excellence. Right, every organization in the world has certain processes that they have to execute really well if they're going to be successful, if their customers are going to be successful, and their employees are going to be happy. So we help essentially monitor the health of those processes and identify how you can improve them on an ongoing basis.
Now, that's a very broad category. You covered a wide range of people and skills and operations. Is there like an avatar for Pyze that says, okay, here's the prototypical client that is kind of in our sweet spot?
Yeah, so people who are managing complex processes that involve a lot of human interaction are typically good candidates for Pyze because the more touch points you have on a process, the more opportunities for the ball to get dropped, right, or something to go wrong, and we can essentially do an MRI of a process. And by process, think about opening a bank account at a Fortune 500 financial institution, where you've got to go to a branch, submit a bunch of documents, and then that kicks off a bunch of steps that need to happen before that account is open. Right, there's everything from compliance to fraud review to funding, document review, et cetera, and these are all things that are done by people. Some of them might be done by machines these days, right? But you've got to understand how that process flows from end to end, and it's not linear.
Right.
You have different workflows that process can take. Right. You have the ping pong effect that might happen where stuff goes from the back office to the branch to the customer. Right. We've all had loans or claims that we filed where it doesn't go anywhere, and and it's because they were waiting for some document from us that no one told us about, right?
Exactly.
So we'll actually identify where those leaks are in the process, where you have bottlenecks, what are the things that are keeping work from getting done, and then show how you can improve those. And by improving them, you might be, hey, you got a bad workflow, you should re-architect it. You might need to add automation. You might need better training, because every time it lands on John's desk, it's waiting a week to get done, right?
Yeah.
But by looking at the data, we're able to sort of provide an objective, unbiased view of what's actually happening in that process.
Right. And you, in that short period of time, you have generated about 57 questions that are follow-up questions that I want to ask, and there's no way I'm going to remember even a third of those. But the one thing that comes to mind as you were speaking is kind of the old adage that said, I'm a jack of all trades, but a master of none. And it seems like to me that you have kind of put that to rest. You've got to be a master of all things. I mean, you really have to know the business processes from kind of A to Z. And really, it sounds like industry agnostic. I mean, it's not like you're basing that necessarily on the company specific, but these are kind of external restraints or constraints on the company. Is that kind of an accurate description?
That's right. So we have a horizontal platform that can really be used to measure any process, right? And I say, look, a process is a process is a process, right? So as long as you have a digital footprint, which almost everything today does, right? If you're still opening that bank account by passing, sticky notes and yellow pad papers from one cubicle to the next, you're going to go out of business.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we've had a few banks that have come to us who are still doing things manually, and they're interested in automating and digitizing their their system. And it starts by measuring what you have today, right? So, like, in order to be successful in any business, right, whether it's financial services, manufacturing, healthcare, any business at all, right? You've got to know your process inside out,
right,
and then be able to optimize it. Because if you can't measure it, you can't improve it.
Right. And the things that get measured or get more monitored get improved. So there is a. So it's interesting. There were kind of two schools of thought here as I was listening to you. One of them is the idea that, you certainly have regulations that you've got to adhere to, or you're going to end up find yourself in trouble at the end of an audit, all those things. Or there's the side that says, we're going to improve your processes and really increase your bottom line. There's going to be a high ROI on you doing things much more efficiently and using better data and, to make decisions and things like that. Is there one or the other of those that you guys focus more on? You focus more on just, making people more efficient and effective and adhering to regulations, or is it, hey, we can really help your bottom line here?
Yeah, it's really the focus and motivation typically is improving the business operations, right? It's about growing top line, right? Improving the bottom line. People figure out how to comply to regulations, right? One way or another.
Even with a yellow pad and sticky notes.
That's right. But understanding how you improve the business is something that is of interest to any business owner, right? So we get typically engaged in two contexts. One is, I've got this process, help me improve the orchestration of it, help me improve, right, like you said, my bottom line. And the other area that we're seeing a lot of demand from is people who are modernizing their legacy systems.
Yeah.
Right? So there's been a lot of focus, especially during COVID, of people taking kind of their legacy on-premise systems and then moving them to the cloud, right? And modernizing them. Now, you could just take what you have today and do a lift and shift to the cloud. And oftentimes these modernization conversations are in that context, right? How do we improve the tech stack? How do we, get off of legacy technologies and use new technologies in doing that, and address our technical debt, right?
Right.
What we're doing is helping people think about how do you tackle your process debt, right? Like if you're re-architecting your system, well, you have a great opportunity to see how work actually gets done, right, in these legacy systems. And then as you modernize, transform not just the technology, but the process itself, so you can be more effective.
I mean, there's so much to wrap your head around. If you and I were like stepping on an elevator, we're going to have the next 10 floors. We got about 45 seconds to have a quick chat and introduction here. I'm a business owner. What's your elevator pitch? What's the kind of the hook of your service that you could kind of synopsize or condense in a very quick, capture here?
Yeah, I mean, look, when I sit down with CEOs of companies or business line managers or general managers, right? The question I always ask them is, do you know how work gets done for your key processes, right? You might think but do you really understand what are the different workflows that it takes, all right, to process that claim or to fulfill that order, right, or to procure a piece of equipment for your business. And understanding the inefficiencies of those different processes will help you improve customer satisfaction, right? If we're talking about, let's say, contact center operations, or right, and improve efficiency of costs, and those things really typically generate, and people are like, yeah, I would love to have an understanding of how work actually gets done, and because look, people have been engaging in process improvement for decades and decades and decades, right? But it's often in the context of, okay, I'm going to have a consultant come in, talk to a bunch of people, get some sort of, qualitative understanding of what's happening, maybe look at a few transactions, right? Spot check some transactions, because that's really all you can do, right? And that process is expensive, it's painful. The report that gets produced is stale as soon as it's produced, right? And we can come in, plug in our software into the process, and identify bottlenecks, hotspots, inefficiencies by looking at 100% of all transactions all the time, right? So we're running 24/7, right? Like one of our customers said, hey, you guys are like McKinsey in a box, right? So that's analogy. That's what we're doing, right? We're always, and then you can hit play and see how that process flows through your system, right? And then say, oh, here's the bottleneck, and then you could click on it and be like, oh, okay, I have a slowdown in my production because of my supply chain. And then you can drill into that and be like, oh, this vendor is late every month in getting me the parts that I need.
Yeah.
Right. So you can actually now take actions to remediate that problem.
So is this proprietary software, or is this software that you are, kind of taken different disparate pieces and kind of built a process around, or what's kind of the secret sauce?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's all proprietary. We run as a SaaS service, right? So we're available anywhere in the world to customers, and we got people in Asia, in Europe, Australia, right? Lots and lots of customers here in the US that use us, and really, like, we're being used to address some mission critical systems, right? The US Air Force is one of our biggest customers, and we're helping them optimize the process that they use to select which planes should fly which missions.
Wow.
Right? Which is about as mission critical as you can get.
That's about as mission critical as that. It's in Wikipedia, when it says mission critical, it probably has that example.
Right. Yeah, and and today that process is very manual. It's dependent on a lot of people crunching a lot of numbers, accessing data, right, from your maintenance history system, and the mission specification system. There's like 5 or 6 or 7 different systems that people are pulling data from, analyzing it, right, creating reports that are then being used for decisioning, and we can help streamline that entire process.
Right.
And in a warfighting scenario, that translates to life saving.
No doubt.
It's not just about cost and speed. Right, and then we've done work with the U.S. Postal Service to help them streamline operations of how mail gets delivered. Right, so how does mail flow from a processing plant to a distribution center? So there's lots of use cases, and like you asked, sort of like, this is so general, and that's both a blessing and a curse for us, right? Because you could really apply it anywhere, and but for us, we've been focusing on people who are really interested in improving operations, right? So like, this is new technology, so we want to work with people who want to embrace innovation, want to change, are open to change, right? And
Right.
want to change the way things get done. And then we work with them to make it happen.
It is such a, I feel like I'm kind of beating a dead horse here that says, how complex the target seems. I mean, when you use the word company, you can client, whatever you're working with there, and I'm thinking, that's kind of a generic term, but it is so diverse. It's like snowflakes. There's no two alike out there,
Right.
And I'm trying to wrap my head around you coming into a company and saying, okay, we're going to measure your processes and say, we're going to show you where the bottlenecks are. We're going to show you where the leakage is, the downtime, all these things. And I'm thinking that is so individual, like let's just take turnaround time or something like that. You're saying, okay, this area seems really slow in their turnaround time. Well, did you measure that their issues are very complex? It makes sense that they would take longer, to turn something around there versus something that's kind of the low end customer service. They should answer in 24 hours.
Yep.
I mean, just
Yep.
so many unique, use cases in one company alone,
Right.
that I just think, how in the world? I mean, I want you to take me back to that day you woke up and you thought, I think I can design a software that can fix all problems, in the operations side of a company. Talk about a big ask.
It is a big ask. But so we don't walk in and claim to know anyone's business, right? Like, in fact, like, I think if anyone came in, like a consultant came in and said, hey, I know how you can improve your business. No one knows my business better than me, right?
Yep.
As a CEO of a company.
Yep.
And the same is true for our customers, right? They know their business pretty well. What they don't have is the data to give them the signals that they need to improve their operations, right? So a lot of time is spent in figuring out those signals or pulling data from these different systems to figure out, okay, how what are the complexities and the turnaround time. So what we're really doing is empowering the customer, the business owners, to be able to make data-driven decisions, right? By showing, okay, these are the 10 steps in your process, right? And even though you might think that things flow linearly or more time is spent on step 8 because it's the most complex, it's really step 6 and 5 where people are spending time, and maybe they shouldn't be, right? And you
Makes
can
sense.
segment that data, any which way you want. Our AI engine will actually be interrogating the data as it's coming in, and we'll sort of say, hey, did you know that you're slow in step 5 because of XYZ reasons, right? And now the business person can kind of say, okay, well, yeah, X and Y make sense, but Z doesn't make sense to me, right? So let me dig into that and make changes. And now you can actually see the output, right? Because we're still monitoring, right? It's not like a one and done. So as you make changes to the system, you can actually see, well, did I make things better or maybe make things worse, right?
Right.
So we're really empowering people to have that visibility themselves.
So I got bad news. Bill's number 6, and Bill's obviously the weak link in the chain, and we handed him his cardboard box. And by Monday, the number 6 is picked back up, and it's speeding up the process. But is it like kind of curated or coordinated in like a dashboard feature, or that is kind of like, man, I can see the entire process and change the kind of the factors and the filters and determine, like turn knobs and the digital knobs on the dashboard and kind of measure different things at different times, because you're talking about, this virtually real time.
Yeah, we work in real time when the data is available. Like, we can plug directly into applications. There's some systems where we might get data once an hour, once a day, right? Depending on kind of the cycle time of the process. If you've got a process that 30 days, getting a daily update is probably fine. To be able to identify the issues. But yeah, absolutely, it's very visual. I'm a big believer in kind of having a visual understanding of what's happening. Right. That's how that picture's worth 1,000 words for a reason. Right. So being able to not just see how, if I've got 5 different steps, how does work flow, right? You can actually play and see how work flows and where things get stuck. We'll show heat maps. We'll show loops of little balls that represent each transaction, because we can follow a transaction from start to end. So think of like an order management system. We can look at, okay, where does an order originate from? It might be that I've got a marketplace and I've got channel partners and I've got a website where people can place orders. So you've got these different sources where an order can start, and then it all kind of maybe comes to the same place where it's validated, and then it flows for review or fulfillment or whatever needs to happen. Right? And so we'll paint all of that dynamically, right? And someone doesn't need to go in and say, okay, this is step 1 and step 2 and step 3. We'll look at an order ID and how it flows from one step to another, or how it bounces back and forth, and then paint that picture to be able to sort of identify, okay, well, this is your actual real world process, and these are the issues that you might have.
And it's kind of future speak stuff as well too. I would imagine. I mean, you've probably built a system that it actually improves itself over time through AI and through the data collection and just trial and error and tweaking that you're doing kind of on the back end. That every year this system is actually improving itself.
Yeah, it's got to, right? Otherwise, we'll go out of business too.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've got to, and we've built in sort of capabilities where when we find an insight, right, the customer can actually give us feedback. They can say, hey, this is helpful or it's not, and then we'll learn from that, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely, and that feedback loop is critical of from users. But so I know this is not your first time at the rodeo, so to speak. So talk about some other things that in your past that you've been involved with has kind of led you to this point. What are some other ventures that you've been involved in?
Yeah, I've been a startup junkie for a long time. I started my career in the startup world 20 some years ago. I was recruited by this tiny little company called Wiley Technology that invented application performance monitoring. So if you remember in the early days of the internet, I'm talking about like 2000, you try to sign up for a credit card or rent a car or pay a bill, and the site would just go kaput, right? and you kind of got that sad face that would show up, or the blue screen of death, as we used to call it,
exactly.
Right? All of that stuff had happened, and no one knew why, right? That happened. So on the back end, you had these large banks, and I was working at Citigroup before I joined Wiley, where we'd have these massive conference calls with like 30 people on it for 12 hours trying to figure out, well, was it the application? Was it the database? Was it the infrastructure? With like everyone pointing fingers and playing the blame game. And Wiley figured out how to peek inside the application, right? These monolithic Java .NET applications, and be able to figure out, oh, it's this component, or it's a memory leak, or it's this database connection that caused the application to just die on you. And when I joined, it was like I was employee number 14, I think, right? So it was like a dozen people, no revenue, right? And I had the opportunity to sort of grow with that company, right? That was really my first real startup experience, and we grew it to a healthy size. It was acquired by Computer Associates for about $400 million.
Wow.
So it was a great success story, but I learned a lot of things we did right along the way. Some things we probably could have done better, and and even at that time, I always thought, well, this is so cool. Wouldn't it be cool if we could do it for processes also, right? That was all sort of in the back of my head. And
so it's your 20-year journey to today. There you go. You're
right.
your overnight success for 20
That's
years.
right. Overnight success. And it's all about you just wake up one morning, you got an idea, and the next day, bang, it was bang. You got all
some
these
VCs chase you down the street, want to write you a check.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, no, and we've been fortunate to have some really great VCs that work with us. Illuminate Ventures, Benham Global Ventures, Coalition Ventures.
Still on your board, aren't they?
Yeah, we've got a few of these on our board. It's been super helpful, and so it's a good ride. We're making a difference, and I think, look, that's the biggest thing that matters, right? And what keeps me excited to kind of get up every morning and figure out, okay, how can we do this better?
And an ever-changing landscape. The next day is not the same as yesterday. But this is a great segue into kind of my favorite part of the podcast. It really is. I really want to dive inside kind of the founder's brain and their soul, for some real insight here, because a lot of our listeners are sitting in cubes. They are just getting started with things, or they got ideas or whatever, and they want to learn from people that are further along the journey than they are, that can kind of look back and say, hey, we're gonna pay it forward a little bit here. And so what are one or two really solid nuggets that you could share with somebody that's a little further behind you in the journey, that we're just one or two kind of bullet point really gold that you could say, I wish I would have known this when I started, because it would have really kind of changed the dynamic. It would really change the game, for our companies. But just one or two really solid things that really come to mind.
Yeah. Well, I could sit here all day and tell you how naive I was when I started.
Don't be naive. Step number one.
Absolutely. Well, I think the biggest learning for me it really has been, it's going to take longer than you think it will. So plan for it, right? Like it's like, and that applies to everything in the startup journey, right? Whether it's product market fit, raising money, hiring the right talent, getting your first customer, finding an office space, right? Which these days is not as big of a issue, given we're in this remote post-COVID world. But really, like anything and everything that you think you're going to be able to achieve, you'd be an exception if you get there in the time frame you think you're going to, right? Yeah. So you got to plan for it, and if you don't, you're gonna run into problems like running out of money. And the temperature in the valley, in Silicon Valley, is cooling off a little bit, right, with regards to funding, and VCs are pulling back. So we see a lot of companies being impacted in that regard, that haven't done the planning, right, that they probably should have.
Yeah. Anything else that just comes to mind?
Yeah, look, I think the other big suggestion that I have for every person that wants to be a CEO is learn sales, right? Because
I've heard that over and over again.
Yeah, like it's something that will pay dividends, because you're selling all the time, not just to customers, right? You're selling to VCs, you're trying to recruit the best employees. You've got to be the cheerleader, right?
You're selling your current employees.
Yeah, you're selling
a vision. That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
And a culture,
but like sales is definitely a skill set, right? You can't just take a product and walk it to someone and be like, hey, look, I built this really cool WYSIWYG thing. You should buy it. It's going to help you, right? Like there's no one has. People are too busy with what they're doing, right? To even know that they can be helped, right, with new things. So there's a whole process that you have to go through, and then market. Like my background is as a marketer, so that piece of it came naturally to me, but that's also critical in terms of being able to package what it is that you want to communicate to people in a effective and efficient way.
Sure. By the sales process, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much, but I think just learn, like there's a bunch of books that helped me early on, right? Like, and a lot of it wasn't sort of like the business schooly books. It was more just reading about people's experiences, right, with startups and their journeys, right, that kind of they went through, and their trials and tribulations. And the other big advice that I give to anyone who's thinking about starting a business is that, look, this is not for the faint of heart. You're gonna have all kinds of problems, right? And each company has different problems. So you've got to be in it for the long haul, and you should plan that, like it's 2, 3, 4 years before you become that overnight success.
Yeah, before you stop eating ramen. That's
hopefully it's sooner than that, but yeah.
Yeah. So give me a couple of books that you read early on, or even recently, that really kind of stick out to you think would be good resources, especially in that space you just talked about.
Oh gosh, I mean, I remember reading this this book. It's called Founders at Work, I think. It's maybe 10 years ago or something, but that comes to my mind right now, which was just stories of like PayPal and a bunch of the other companies, like a dozen stories or something, that just talked about the issues that people had. So that was good. I like the hard thing about hard. I think it's
the hard thing about hard things, or something like that.
Yeah, it's about his story and kind of how they went out of business almost 2 or 3 times, right? So you've got to, that kind of stuff will happen, right, before you become an overnight success. So you've got to ride those waves, because entrepreneurship it's all psychological.
Right.
If you can will it, you will succeed.
You still got to have product market fit in that will, though, right?
Oh, well, no doubt, right? Like that's you still got to do the blocking and tackling stuff of making sure that you're building the right thing for the right people, and someone's willing to pay you for it.
Right. Hey, as we close up today, I just wanted to ask you one other question that I normally don't ask, and I'm really curious to get your take on this. The whole idea that if you were, if just woke up tomorrow and everything was shut down that you're doing currently, and you had to start over again, just give me 30 seconds of, this is the industry I would look at, this is the problem I would think about solving. I'm just really curious to get your take on that.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I'm so focused on what we're doing right now that I haven't thought about that much. But if I woke up tomorrow, like I would certainly look at the crypto space. Right. There's a lot of opportunity there to prevent fraud, to streamline execution of transactions. Right? Like that whole ecosystem is so immature today, and you have so many people being taken advantage of. Right? There's like I don't know what the stat is, but there's these new projects being launched every hour probably, or every day, that either are taking advantage of people or aren't fully optimized. So there's lots and lots of opportunities to sort of help the people that are doing the right things, because for sure decentralization is something that the world has been working towards over the last decade or two, and crypto represents a fundamental shift that we've seen take hold in the last just 2 or 3 years, right? That's going to accelerate as we
Right. No question about it. I mean, I'm gonna have you on again in 12 months, and it's gonna be exponentially different than it was. You're gonna be going, yeah, about 6 months into this, I decided to jump in the crypto space, and here we go. We're on the new rodeo that we're in. But man, I just thank you again for just taking time to kind of share your story with our listeners and kind of wrap up a great week here and in the States. And just where's the best place that people could learn more about you and about your company, Pyze?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, so hit me up on Twitter, PSinghSF. Check out our website, pyze.com, pyze.com. If you are interested in learning about process intelligence and how we can help improve your business, sign up for a demo. Mention the podcast, and I'd love to pop in and say hi to you personally. And certainly, if you're in the Bay Area, I'm looking for all kinds of excuses to meet people again. So.
And there's a couple of 3 open jobs on their site right now. They're always looking for people to expand their team. But Prabhjot, thank you again for taking time today and really just playing your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Have a great weekend.
Right. Yeah, right on, Kevin. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Look forward to catching up with you again soon. Bye.
Another episode in the books. We hope you heard some great takeaways. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on iTunes and YouTube. As always, thanks for listening to Rising Tide.